Good morning, I'm Joe Haas from Informa Business Intelligence. We're here in Boston at BioPharm America 2015. Pleased to have with us right now Jeremy Levin of Ovid Therapeutics. And Jeremy, you're going to be speaking at the plenary session today, and it's about executives who are, in a way, downsizing, going from large companies to kind of startups. So what's the takeaway there?
Good morning, Joe. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me to speak with you.
Oh, great. No problem.
Really great. Look, I think the takeaway is very straightforward. For the last 15 years, you've had a cadre of tremendously skilled executives who are growing up in the pharmaceutical industry, and they are actually experiencing the changes in molecular biology, the changes in new science, and understanding how that can be translated into medicine. So now, as these large pharmaceutical companies become giant pharmaceutical companies, they're finding that it's tough to do that translation. So what they want to do is they want to move into smaller organizations and have a far greater impact directly with the patients, with the payers and others. So I think this is a marvelous evolution of the industry, and one which has been expected for some time.
Would you call it a trend, or is it you, Chris Viehbacher, and a few other people who've gone down this path recently?
No, I think this is definitely a trend. This is a trend which has been, there's a good groundwork for this over the last few years, but in actual fact what's happened now is as large companies get so much larger, so much more complex, that the time that any one individual has within those companies to actually become innovative has gone down. Mm-hmm. And so these individuals, there are certain individuals that segregate out. These are the individuals that are migrating out. This trend will continue so long as there's capital to back these innovative companies. And with a robust market, you for sure are going to see a lot more happening.
So it's interesting. When I go to conferences like this, I hear the large companies talk about we want to be more innovative, we want to be more biotech. And I guess now we have individuals saying that with their feet, so to speak.
You know, it's a very good comment, but in actual fact, large pharma and large biotech are identical.
Yeah.
They have converged over the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. 20 years ago, most large pharma would have given not a second's thought to molecular biology in their labs, not a second's thought. 20 years ago, no biotech would have thought about the sales forces and pricing in Washington. If you look today, what you find in the large biotech and you find in the large pharmas, at the bench level, very similar types of people, remarkable scientists working using the same technologies. Now, there's a slight difference. At that level, in order for new science, new technologies to be adopted, much more easy in the small company than in the large company. But basically, many basic technologies are the same. And indeed, if you now look at the pharma board and the bio board, those are the industry organizations at the top level where you're talking about sales, pricing, policy, very similar people on both boards. So I think you're seeing a convergence in any event. And I would say to you that the real difference resides in the complexity of the organizations. Big companies, whether they're big biotech or big pharma, actually are inherently complex. And that complexity does not allow for nimbleness, does not allow for easy, rapid innovation. So when they say they want that, what they really are saying is they want less complex organizations, and those that can accomplish it will be successful.
Now, we were talking before about your current company, Ovid Therapeutics, and you told me that you have a very interesting real estate perspective in that you're housed right next door to Pfizer Inc. Could you tell us a little bit about that situation?
Yes, I think for me, the core of any company is that it has a purpose. And if you have a strategy to deliver on that purpose, you must have a culture in that company to build that strategy, to execute on it. And for me, the kind of company that Ovid is a company intrinsically culturally focused on the patient, culturally focused on innovation, culturally focused on nimbleness. And so we were very fortunate to find many different environments that could have fostered this. Mm-hmm. Certainly here in Boston, marvelous environments for it. But in New York, there are a set of buildings which were set up specifically to encourage innovation amongst the IT entrepreneurs. These are a group called WeWork. Mm-hmm. And we decided rather than go into a laboratory building, we would go into a building which was actually full of entrepreneurs, an environment which would stimulate the people coming into Ovid in the same way that these young, innovative executives were. And that's proved wonderful. Now it happens, by complete coincidence, that Pfizer had sold a building right next door to it. There are connections directly to Pfizer. And I admire Ian Reid tremendously. And I also know that it's quite fun to know that right next to him is this marvelous little company amongst hundreds of others in this building growing. And we don't aspire to be a Pfizer. We don't aspire to be a giant pharma company. But we do have the great pleasure of bringing many people from those companies to us, and they react wonderfully well to this innovative environment.
I do want to get back to Ovid in a minute. It's pronounced Ovid, not Ovid?
It depends.
Oh, okay. Either is okay.
American or English.
Got it. So before we go back to Ovid, you said you don't aspire to be Pfizer. I think that one of the questions of the moment in biopharma is Pfizer doesn't really seem to aspire to be Pfizer anymore. Do you have an opinion you'd share with us on whether they should sell off some of their units and get back to core competencies, be kind of a pure play pharma, as some analysts are urging them to?
You know, Joe, I have many opinions over the industry. One thing I've learned over the years is that you let those companies speak for themselves. Each company can be in a mistaken position from the outside. Each company has a rhythm. Each company has its own decisions to make. 2006, 2007, Jim Cornelius faced the pressure from the outside world to sell Bristol, faced the pressure from the outside world to split Bristol. And he bravely took that moment to say, no, I'm going to either innovate this company or do something different. And when you think about that, there's no way that you can ever judge what the outside world says and what it means regarding an inside of the company. You have to ask those people because they have aspirations, they have directions, and they know their companies. So I don't think it would be appropriate for me to second guess when I'm not behind those doors.
I think oftentimes we all find ourselves in the situation of the saying, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So Ovid has a focus on neuroscience and looking at more orphan conditions, and you told me that you're looking to apply some of what you learned in kind of a pioneering spot in immuno-oncology during your days at Bristol.
Yes, I think it's a very important point. As you look at the various areas of unmet medical need and where you can have a real impact on patients, you have to make a decision where you're going to spend your time. How are you going to invest money of investors into areas that you think will be incredibly important now, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years time. And then you have to adopt an approach for that. And in my case, I had the opportunity to spend a year thinking this through, which was the area that was going to explode, which was the area that was going to really make a difference over the next 5 years, and it is neurology. There's no question about it. When you look back, the teachings that I had in the early days of immuno-oncology in 2005, 2006, 2007, the conditions are very similar. The science has come together, the understanding of certain small disorders have come together, therapeutics are beginning to emerge, important therapeutics. Those conditions led to focusing on orphan diseases of cancer, in that case melanoma, and from melanoma today we have the wonderful plethora of approaches that are being adopted using immuno-oncology in lung cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, and we really are exploding. It's a whole new area. It won't be the definitive answer to cancer, but it will have very many different profound impacts. That same set of conditions exists today in neurology, much like that existed in immuno-oncology a decade ago. And so what we're seeing and what our approach is to focus on orphan disorders, to use them of the brain. These are diseases like Angelman's, Fragile X, Rett's, Dravet's, and ask the question, can we look through the keyhole of their biology and understand the biology of the brain much better, so that we can then start putting important investments into larger disorders. For the moment, we want to impact those patients with those terrible disorders, and hopefully we will.
Okay. And before we wrap, I hope you don't mind if we talk a little bit about the adventure you had in your career a couple years ago when you left Bristol and became the CEO at Teva, moved, I believe, your family to Israel. And the comments I recall at the time is that you were very much looking forward to living in Israel for a while. Teva, you didn't have the length of tenure some expected. How would you assess the time at Teva and why that ended?
Well, I will say to you that the experience I had in Israel was marvelous. I've lived in Israel before, and I have, for 40 years, I've been closely associated with Israel, and I intend to be associated for many years to come.
Okay.
Great friends, wonderful people that I've met, and of course a very challenging environment, but one which is marvelous. The experience at Teva was marvelous. I don't care for its end particularly.
Sure.
That said, the opportunity to impact millions of patients around the world through providing them inexpensive, cheap, generic medicines was very instructive. And I had the opportunity to meet a large number of very important medical issues face-on. Now, I do think that whole area of generics changed fundamentally 4 or 5 years ago,
Yes.
and all the generic industry has to challenge that and understand how to deal with it. And I suspect that each one of the companies will adopt a different strategy.
Yeah.
But I do know that the strategies that were adopted in the past, massive acquisitions, I do know and following on trying to attack innovators and breaking their patents, this strategy is not one that's viable any longer. I think you have to ask the question, can you in these large companies get the cost position? Can you deliver the quality position? Can you do the right kind of substantial contracts? So a lot of teaching, a lot of learning went on during that period of time. And at the end of the day, my family and I, we're delighted to be back in the United States, but don't regret anything.
Okay, great. We'll be watching Ovid Therapeutics. Jeremy Levin, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure, Joe. Really nice meeting you.
Likewise. We'll be back with more from BioPharm America as the conference goes on. Thanks for watching.